In the spring of 2020, as the COVID-19 pandemic swept across the United States, fear, uncertainty, and financial panic spread just as quickly. Businesses closed overnight, restaurants locked their doors, offices emptied, and millions of Americans suddenly found themselves struggling to survive financially. In response, the federal government rushed to create emergency programs meant to keep the economy alive. One of the largest of those programs was the Paycheck Protection Program, commonly called PPP. It was designed to provide fast financial relief to small businesses so they could continue paying employees and covering essential expenses during the crisis. Billions of dollars were released at record speed. Banks processed applications in days instead of months. The program helped many businesses survive the economic shock of the pandemic. But at the same time, investigators would later discover that the speed and scale of the program also created opportunities for fraud. In the Chicago area, one tax preparer saw an opportunity that would eventually lead to a federal investigation, criminal charges, and a decade in prison. The man at the center of the case was Sharhabeel Shreiteh, a tax preparer and accountant who worked in the suburbs south of Chicago. For years, Shreiteh built a business helping individuals and small business owners prepare tax returns and handle financial paperwork. Tax preparers often become trusted advisors for their clients. People bring them their income records, tax documents, bank statements, and personal information. Many clients rely heavily on the preparer's knowledge of complicated tax laws and financial forms. In communities across the United States, tax preparers help families navigate government programs and financial systems they might not fully understand on their own. According to federal prosecutors, Shreiteh used that trust and knowledge of financial paperwork to carry out a massive scheme connected to pandemic relief loans. Shreiteh lived in the south suburban Chicago area, including time in Crete, Illinois, and he worked with clients across nearby communities. By 2020, he had already spent years working in tax preparation. When the federal government announced the Paycheck Protection Program through the CARES Act, many small business owners rushed to apply for assistance. The program allowed businesses to receive government-backed loans to cover payroll, rent, and other necessary costs during the pandemic. If the money was used properly, the loans could eventually be forgiven and effectively turn into grants. Because the government wanted the money distributed quickly, banks relied heavily on the information submitted by applicants. Payroll numbers, employee counts, and revenue figures were largely taken at face value during the early stages of the program. Investigators would later say that Shreiteh quickly realized how easily those applications could be manipulated. According to federal prosecutors, the planning for the scheme began shortly after the PPP program launched in 2020. Shreiteh worked with at least one associate, including a businessman named Tracy Mitchell from Joliet, Illinois. Prosecutors later alleged that the two men began recruiting people who wanted help obtaining PPP loans. Many of these individuals were self-employed workers, gig workers, or people with small side businesses. Some may have believed the loans were legitimate assistance arranged through a knowledgeable tax professional. Others knowingly participated in the fraud. The recruits provided personal identifying information, such as social security numbers, bank account information, and other documents needed to submit loan applications. Once the information was gathered, Shreiteh and his associates began preparing and submitting the paperwork to lenders participating in the program. The core of the scheme involved altering or fabricating financial information in the loan applications. According to the indictment later filed in federal court, the applications often included exaggerated payroll figures, inflated income amounts, or claims that applicants operated businesses that either did not exist or had little real activity. Some applications stated that applicants had payrolls of at least $90,000 per year, even when that information had never been verified. By increasing payroll numbers and business income on paper, the applications qualified for larger loans under the rules of the program. The higher the numbers, the larger the loan that could be approved by the bank. Shreiteh charged fees for preparing and submitting these applications. According to prosecutors, he typically received between $1,000 and $4,000 for each loan that was successfully approved. With hundreds and eventually more than 1,000 applications being processed, those fees quickly added up. Over time, investigators estimated that Shreiteh personally received approximately $740,000 in kickbacks from the scheme. As the scheme expanded, the number of applications submitted through Shreiteh grew dramatically. Federal prosecutors later said that more than 1,500 fraudulent loan applications were filed on behalf of at least 1,025 individuals. Altogether, those applications led to about $14 million in loan funds being approved and dispersed by lenders participating in the PPP program. Many of the loans were later forgiven by the government, meaning the money did not have to be repaid. That made the losses even larger for taxpayers. During the same time period, Shreiteh's personal life was becoming increasingly complicated. Court records and reporting later revealed that he maintained a second family outside the United States. In addition to his wife in Illinois, Shreiteh had another wife and children living in the Palestinian territories, where he had family roots. According to prosecutors, money obtained through the PPP fraud helped support that second household. Authorities said he used part of his earnings from the scheme to build a house and purchase a luxury vehicle for his wife and 3 children living overseas. The existence of the second family became a source of tension within his American household. His wife in the United States, Hanya Atiq Shreiteh, reportedly discovered that large amounts of money were being sent overseas. Messages referenced in court filings showed that she became angry about the financial support being provided to the family abroad, including the construction of a home and expensive purchases. Despite that tension, she later appeared to stand by her husband publicly during parts of the legal process. While Shreiteh's scheme appeared successful for a period of time, federal investigators across the country were beginning to scrutinize pandemic relief programs. The massive scale of the PPP program made fraud investigations inevitable. Agencies including the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division began reviewing suspicious loan patterns. Investigators looked for clusters of applications submitted by the same preparers, identical financial figures across multiple borrowers, or unusually large payroll claims for individuals who appeared to have minimal business activity. In the Chicago region, investigators noticed patterns in PPP loan applications linked to Shreiteh and his associates. Multiple applications contained similar figures or were submitted through the same channels. Financial records and electronic filings began drawing attention from investigators examining relief program abuse. As authorities traced the applications back to the preparers responsible for submitting them, Shreiteh's role began to emerge. Evidence collected by investigators included loan application records, bank documents, digital communications, and financial transactions. Some communications reportedly revealed that Shreiteh was aware the scheme could eventually attract attention from authorities. In one message cited by prosecutors, he reportedly told an associate that the operation might be the most stupid fraud in history, acknowledging the risk that it could lead to criminal consequences. The investigation eventually led to federal charges. In September 2023, prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois announced an indictment charging Shreiteh with multiple counts of wire fraud. The indictment alleged that he and his associate recruited individuals to submit fraudulent PPP loan applications and knowingly provided false information to lenders participating in the government program. Each fraudulent electronic submission formed the basis of a wire fraud charge under federal law. Federal prosecutors described the scheme as an organized effort that lasted from 2020 into 2021. During that period, Shreiteh and his associates continued submitting loan applications on behalf of clients while collecting their fees.
Investigators also discovered that during part of the same time period, Shreiteh collected more than $40,000 in unemployment benefits, even while earning significant income from the PPP application fees. After the charges were filed, the case moved through the federal court system in Chicago. Legal proceedings continued for months as prosecutors gathered evidence and defense attorneys prepared responses. Federal fraud cases often involve large amounts of financial documentation, including bank records, tax filings, electronic communications, and application forms. Prosecutors needed to demonstrate that the false information in the loan applications was submitted knowingly and intentionally. In August 2025, Shreiteh pleaded guilty to one count of wire fraud related to the scheme. By entering the guilty plea, he admitted his role in preparing and submitting fraudulent loan applications that led to millions of dollars being distributed through the PPP program. The guilty plea avoided the need for a lengthy trial, but did not determine the final sentence. That decision would be made later by the judge during the sentencing phase. Sentencing in federal court involves a detailed process. Judges review the U.S. sentencing guidelines, which consider factors such as the amount of financial loss, the number of victims, the defendant's criminal history, and whether the defendant held a position of trust. Prosecutors and defense attorneys each submit sentencing memoranda arguing for the punishment they believe is appropriate. The sentencing hearing took place in March 2026 in federal court in Chicago before Martha Paycold, a U.S. district judge. Prosecutors described the fraud as extensive, noting that more than 1,500 fraudulent applications were submitted and approximately $14 million in loan funds had been distributed. They argued that the size of the scheme and the abuse of a program created to help struggling businesses during a national emergency justified a significant prison sentence. During the hearing, Shreiteh addressed the court and apologized for his actions. He spoke about the impact of the case on his family and acknowledged the harm caused by the scheme. Court reports described an emotional moment when the judge announced the final sentence. Judge Paycold sentenced Sharhabeel Shreiteh to 120 months in federal prison, the equivalent of 10 years. The sentence was at the high end of the federal sentencing guidelines for the offense and was believed to be the longest sentence handed down in the Chicago federal court system for a case involving PPP loan fraud. When the sentence was delivered, Shreiteh reportedly covered his face with his hands and cried in the courtroom. The judge explained that the scale of the fraud played a major role in determining the punishment. Prosecutors described the scheme as staggering in size, involving more than 1,000 individuals and millions of dollars in government-backed loans. The court concluded that the seriousness of the offense required a lengthy prison term. With the sentencing complete, the case entered its final stage. Shreiteh was ordered to serve his sentence in the federal prison system. Federal inmates typically serve the majority of their sentences before becoming eligible for release under supervised conditions. The court proceedings also left open additional financial consequences, including potential restitution or financial penalties related to the fraud. The case of Sharhabeel Shreiteh became one of many federal prosecutions connected to misuse of COVID-19 relief programs across the United States. Investigators across multiple federal agencies spent years examining loan records and financial transactions linked to the PPP program. Thousands of cases were opened nationwide as authorities attempted to recover funds and hold individuals accountable for fraudulent applications. In the Chicago area, Shreiteh's case stood out because of the number of applications involved and the amount of money distributed through the scheme. What began during the chaotic early months of the pandemic eventually turned into a multi-year federal investigation, a criminal indictment, a guilty plea, and a 10-year prison sentence. The story that started in 2020 with emergency relief loans intended to help businesses survive a national crisis ultimately ended in a federal courtroom 6 years later. For Sharhabeel Shreiteh, the outcome was a decade behind bars and a case that became one of the largest PPP fraud prosecutions in the Chicago region. Thank you for spending your time with us and watching this story. Cases like this remind us how complex financial crimes can be, especially during times of national crisis. We truly value hearing from our audience. Please share your thoughts, perspectives, or questions in the comment section below. Your feedback and insights help keep the conversation going and allow others in the community to learn from different viewpoints. Whether you are hearing about this case for the first time or have followed it closely, we appreciate you being here and engaging with the discussion. If you found this story informative, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you will be alerted whenever we release new content.